Our next speaker will be Dr. Wood. And Dr. Wood and his wife, Charmaine. Where's Charmaine? She's there. There she is. Let's thank her. You know what? These men could not do the things they're doing without the backing of their wives, right? Yes. And Phyllis always said, when she began her comments on the Equal Forum, Equal Rights Amendment, she always just say, I want to thank my husband, Fred, for letting me be here today. So, and I think that's really true. Now, Dr. Wood and his wife have just recently moved to Vancouver, Washington, because they're awaiting their first grandchild. Isn't that wonderful? And with that, I'm going to ask Dr. Wood to come forward and give his presentation.
It's a vicious rumor that was started by some dancer guy over here on the podium. I don't know. I think his name is Jasper. And I guess maybe in retribution for my having just left Idaho, where he just moved to, so he decides that I'm a doctor. I'm not a doctor, actually. I have to take that back and clarify, lest a nasty rumor gets started that I know more than I think I know. So anyway, I am once in a while, but not very much, not very much. I'm an old West dancer, you know, bang, bang, dance, dance, you turkey. I'm going to talk to you about a difficult topic today, and I thank Orleen for inviting me here to discuss this. She found out that we were on the same page on a couple of things. This is Orleen's book that's available over here on that side. It's called Just Say No to Big Brother's Smart Meters. And it's a great compilation of articles and discussions and emails and so on that kind of summarize the anti-smart meter movement in Northern California, right? At least in Northern California. And so this is a very good thing. I know it's available for basically cost over there. I want to say up front also, I prepared a special set of papers here for attendees of this conference only called Technocracy Papers. That's also available over there. I'm not going to put any mandatory cost on it, but I'd like you to drop something into the little plexiglass bucket to help pay for expenses, okay? So if you only got a nickel, okay. If you got $5, that's better. If you got $10, I'll even dance, for sure. Those of you who know me a little bit, and some of you do, know that I have been pounding the pavement for almost 35 years on the issue of globalization, the global elite, and in particular, the machinations of a group known as the Trilateral Commission. And I worked in the early years, back in the 70s, with a gentleman, a professor by the name of Anthony Sutton, who I met right as he exited Stanford University, where he worked as a research fellow for the Hoover Institute for War, Peace, and Revolution. He was forced out because of the nature of the material he was writing. Make no bones about that, it was. And he was very rather depressed to have his academic career ended rather abruptly. And we met sort of by chance. It wasn't chance really in a divine sense, but we met by chance in New Orleans. I was from Phoenix, Arizona at the time. And we realized that we talked a little bit that we had an incredible story under our hands, our feet, with this new group back then that had just been started called the Trilateral Commission. And this was a group, not government, it was a group of 300 people from around the world, actually about 186 to start, today 300. And there's about 1/3 of them from the United States and 1/3 from Europe and 1/3 from Japan. They met in plenary sessions to discuss and hammer out policies, and they voted for consensus, and they went back to their respective countries to implement the policies that they had basically created in secret. We found that they had released a plethora of written information. Nothing was ever hidden in particular, but Sutton knew how to get a hold of this stuff, so we got all their papers, all their published material, all their recordings that we could get our hands on, and we sifted, we analyzed. Tony was known in those days as the human vacuum cleaner. And he had a penchant for drilling down into the details of minutia that mere mortals would not want any part of, but he did. And we discovered that this group had as an intent to create a new international economic order. That was their words, not mine. New International Economic Order. It was later shortened to New World Order, mostly by George Bush I, when he started referencing it as the New World Order. But the New International Economic Order was a phrase created to guide their entire future. All the policies they wrote were scoped around that phrase. And we thought back then that, well, okay, this must be some kind of a rearranging of the known order into some other order. In other words, like the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's still a boat, it's still deck chairs, and people still go out to sun themselves, but they're just going to be on the other side of the boat, not this side. So we figured that based on what we knew about economics, and Sutton was a professor of economics, by the way, we figured that what we knew about economics, that would be somehow rearranged for their benefit. In other words, they would get all the money and we would end up being the paupers. And that's generally still kind of true in a broad sense. 3 years ago, I'm almost ashamed to say, I was doing some research and some reading, and I ran across a historical study that I had never ever heard of before, called Technocracy. Any of you ever heard of Technocracy in this room, that phrase before? Okay, maybe it's as a result of some of what I've written. But I'd never heard of Technocracy before, and I was rather ashamed that I had missed such an important historical event. I'm convinced that Tony Sutton knew nothing about it either, or we would have been talking about it a long time ago. But Technocracy as an organization was a group that was founded back in the 1930s in the heat of the Depression. And this was a group of scientists and engineers and no politicians to speak of, but scientists, engineers, technicians, and so on, that believed that capitalism was dead and that the resulting society needed to be managed by experts, that is them, the engineers, the scientists, and the technicians. And so they started this popular organization or popular movement called Technocracy, and they actually incorporated it, called it Technocracy, Inc. And you're thinking, you know, what kind of nonsense is this? Well, the nonsense of it is they had over 500,000 card-carrying members across the country in the course of about 18 months. Back then, the Hollywood Bowl had just been built. Some of you have been to the Hollywood Bowl. You know, it's a big place. The stadium there is big, and I don't know how many hundreds of people it fits, but I ran across a picture of one of the early Technocracy Inc. meetings in the Hollywood Bowl, where they were all down front and everything, and the picture was taken from the back of the auditorium, and it was chock full of people. It was one of the most popular uprisings that our country has ever seen. Unfortunately, it was cracked, but that's another story. But we had missed Technocracy. Technocracy had some, and I'm going to just discuss this here and give you some slides in a minute, but Technocracy was a movement that the world thought died in 1940, 1942, 45, somewhere in there, for numerous reasons. I can't go into them now. But it was removed and scrubbed from history. However, because of its academic beginnings at Columbia University, no less, the formal movement of Technocracy kind of died out, although the organization is still in existence today. It's up in, actually physically based in Northwest Washington State. The movement, as a philosophy, lived on at Columbia University in the halls of academia. Can you picture that? Where the professors are still kind of talking about this stuff along the way, even though they're not allowed particularly to use the word technocracy. They're talking about the concepts and looking back at it, how ingenious it was. And so when we come to the Trilateral Commission in you say, what's this got to do with anything? When we come to the Trilateral Commission in 1973, when it was formed by two people, Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller. Now, David Rockefeller, I'm convinced, never had an original thought in his life except just to own everything. They're masters at hijacking any kind of a good idea that's out there And this idea of technocracy was an idea that I believed that Rockefeller and his crowd ended up hijacking for their own benefit. And you say, why do I say that? Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote a book in 1969 called Between Two Ages, subtitle, America's Role in the Technocratic Era. That meant nothing to me back in the 70s. It meant nothing to me in the 80s or 90s either. Until I started studying technocracy and really, and I did study it. I was fanatical for a while. My wife will testify that I went crazy for about 18 months studying technocracy. What I found out, looking backwards now at his book, and looking at what I discovered historically on technocracy today, is that Zbigniew Brzezinski was a technocrat. Now, you have to take my word for now until you go and research the work on my website, augusttribune.com and augustforecast.com, and read the technocracy papers over here. You'll have to read this material and absorb it for yourself, but I am firmly convinced that Zbigniew Brzezinski was a technocrat, and that if he had been alive in 1930 during that movement time, he would have been a member of Technocracy, Inc., and he would have been leading the charge. And so I went back and I reread his book, Between Two Ages, in light of what I learned about technocracy and all of their original writings, and lo and behold, I find out that the book just parallels exactly what they said in 1932. You follow what I'm saying? Okay? Same themes, same concepts, in some cases the same phraseology. He just used the word technotronic to replace technocratic, you see. Similar, but not quite the same. Similar concept, absolutely the same concept. So I want to show you today, going backwards and forwards a little bit about smart grid. I want to show you that smart grid is a subset of technocracy. Smart grid is local, national, and global. This will absolutely blow your mind, but you'll see where we're going here. Smart grid is interdependent with sustainable development and global warming. This part and parcel of the whole mix that we're talking about here. Now, let me define briefly, just to kind of give you an idea, what is smart grid? This is an industry definition, not mine. I didn't make this up. This comes out of, in fact, everything I'm showing you comes out of their literature. A smart grid delivers electricity from suppliers to consumers using two-way digital technology to control appliances at consumers' homes to save energy, reduce costs, increase reliability, and transparency. It sounds nice, doesn't it? Secondly, it's a nickname, another way to look at it, it's a nickname for an ever-widening palette of utility applications that enhance and automate the monitoring and control of electrical distribution. Okay? Now, I know most of you are pretty much in sync of this already. Here's an idea of this idea of smart grid. And you can see up here, over here where we have the meter, it's a little fuzzy, but there's the power meter in your house. And this blue ellipse right here is called the HAN, the Home Area Network. It's kind of like a little bit like the internet, but the home area network just means you locally. It's connected to your itty bitty, weeny teeny electric car that you're all going to own someday. and your washer and dryer and your thermostat, and maybe you'll be driving your dryer, I don't know. But all the electrical things in your home are connected to the meter, which in turn goes out and connects to the power pole. And the idea is that the meter communicates in both directions with everything in your home and everything in the utility outside the home. The green ellipse is the NAN, or the neighborhood area network, which communicates with your neighbor's smart meters and their appliances to help you all balance out and get along together and so on with the energy you have available in your neighborhood. The WAN, the pink one here, is the basically just the wide area network at that point, which means that the data from your meters and your appliances is then broadcast into a broader context to be picked up and delivered back to the utility and back ultimately to the Department of Energy. Switch back to technocracy with me now. There's two senses of this word with a small t and a capital T. Let's do the small t first. Webster's defines technocracy as government by technicians. We can understand that. Management of society by technical experts. We can understand that. Think Obamacare, for instance, health care. Okay, this is ruling by committee, by software, by data, whatever. Technocracy with a capital T, however, includes that, but has a radically new concept that you need to get your hand around. Technocracy proper proposed a replacement economic system, not just new shuffled, replacement economic system based on energy distribution and consumption run by engineers, scientists, and technicians. This is the new economic order, I am convinced at this point. You don't have to agree with me, but I'm convinced of that at this point, that this is the new international economic order that these yahoos had in mind from the get-go. It's just taken them about 30 years to get here to where they can circle us to do it. And I'll show you now a couple of things why. Technocracy, Inc. originated at Columbia University in 1932. It was founded by M. King Hubbert and Howard Scott. Howard Scott fell into anonymity after that. He was a nothing and a nobody, kind of a promoter. M. King Hubbert wrote the Technocracy study course in 1934. You can get that on the internet. It's available. It's available on my website too. And Hubbert later created the peak oil theory. You'll recognize that, and this is in 1954 because M. King Hubbert is basically claimed as one of the fathers of the eco movement. This was the guy, a brilliant geophysicist back in those days, just getting started. He was the guy that created the brainchild behind, if you will, Technocracy, Inc. and the doctrines of technocracy. Some of the highlights of technocracy: by nature, it produces volumes of inviolable regulations that are science-based. Remember that word, you already know it, science-based anything. It creates a totalitarian control in the end, but it is not socialism, communism, or fascism. And I hate to aggravate you on this, but I just have to lay it out. Be aggravated if you have to be. Our ladder is leaning up against the wrong tree on this. It is not communism, socialism, or fascism. It looks like it, but it's not. It's totalitarianism, and it's much worse. You'll see why in a minute. It seeks to replace the price-based economic system with an energy-based system. And think energy currency, think energy credits, think pricing everything in terms of the energy it takes to produce it rather than the free enterprise market system we have right now of currency. Here's some buzzwords. Science-based anything. I don't care what it is. If it's science-based, be suspicious. Sustainable development. You'll find that phrase and that word everywhere you go and read about smart grid or you read about technocracy. It has to do with climate change. You'll see that all the time as well. That's just a straw man, of course, to enforce things like the peak oil theory. Managed health care. You say, well, how does that come into it? Well, rationed health care is part of the total package that technocracy originally envisioned. I'll show you in a minute. You'll find that buzzwords cap and trade, carbon credit, stuff like that, even carbon currency. And then lastly, smart grid, intelligent power meters to deliver sustainable energy. There's the word, sustainable energy again. So those are some things you can keep in mind. Now, I want to show you from 1932, from their own documentation, from their own papers. Actually, this was from the Technocracy study course itself. There were I think there were 6 requirements that they wrote down. You know how engineers, there's some engineers here, right? Who's an engineer? Who's a scientist and engineer, right? You understand project requirements, don't you? Okay, when an engineer attacks something, he says, I want to do something. Okay, he sits down with a piece of paper and he starts writing down the requirements for the project. What do I need? Materials I need. What are the ideas? What has to be solved? That sort of thing. And so these guys, being scientists and engineers, they sat down and they wrote a very detailed list of requirements that would be necessary to implement technocracy in America, first in America, in the North American continent. And so the first thing, register on a continuous 24-hour per day basis the total net conversion of energy. Requirement number 1. You think smart grid for a minute, which you know, and you're going to see, uh-oh. Number 2, by means of the registration of energy converted and consumed, make possible a balanced load. You'll see the word balanced load all over the literature for smart grid and stuff. They're talking about balancing the load here and there, other countries, North America, South America, whatever, Europe. Number 3, provide a continuous inventory of production and consumption. Now, this is not just for energy. This is all production and all consumption. But the first blush is, of course, of energy. Number 4, provide a specific registration of the type, kind, etc., of all goods and services where produced and where used. This is 1932, folks. Are you kind of coming along with me on this? Are they doing this today? I mean, you know, are we being, you know, sliced and diced with the data and stuff? I mean, everybody seems to know everything. And lastly, provide specific registration of the consumption of each individual plus a record and description of the individual. Think Homeland Security, think NSA, think anything, I mean, almost think anything you want. They're circling the noose of this data collection around us, and now all of a sudden, out of the blue comes smart grid. Lo and behold, give the engineers a list of requirements, and they're going to come up with a new bright idea. Lickety-split, okay? Whoever drew this is global green. You can see at the bottom of it is one industry photo. I don't know who the knucklehead green guy was that wrote this, but he put in an incandescent light bulb. Can you figure this, right? Okay, so even their message is not straight. This should not be an incandescent. Shame on them. We should send out the energy police and have them arrested immediately. You know what this is. This is PG&E Smart Meter. Wonderful little device. You can see there's no dials on it. It's all digital. And you can see, I just want to point out here, you can see the little ellipse right here. Or, you know, a little, like a, you know what that means? You see that all over your Wi-Fi router at home and stuff, your cell phone. That is the Wi-Fi enablement where there's circuitry built in to broadcast the data from your meter wirelessly out to a collection point outside of your home. This is a wireless communicating device that communicates with the appliances on the inside of your home and the appliances and the meter and back to the data center. The controller circuit that is being placed into washers, dryers, thermostats, and so on looks something like this. There's several iterations of it now. This was an early one. This technology was developed by the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in Washington State. That's a Department of Energy, not a subsidiary, but a unit of the Department of Energy, kind of like Lawrence Livermore Labs is down here. And the PNNL developed this technology, this controller chip, to be placed into all the appliances and the dryers and the thermostats and so on. And they sell this, license this technology to a firm in Texas to make this. And now, of course, all of the major manufacturers are just running nuts over this to put this chip into everything you buy. So I dare say in another year at least, you're not going to be able to buy a washer, dryer, a new thermostat, air conditioner, whatever, that doesn't have this technology embedded in it, and there is no way to turn it off within the device. This is another industry photo of what the home area network looks like, and you can see the meter out here on the side communicating with all the different things. A little solar in here to feed some power back. That's the token advantage to us, you see. Well, if you have a solar panel, you can sell the power back to the power company and bank some up. They don't tell you that, you know, it either costs $50,000 to, you know, do your whole house, or if you put in a panel this size, it's going to get you about maybe 3 cents a day if you're lucky. But this is one depiction. Here's another one. This is a little bit more detailed, and this is another industry photo again, something from them. But you see they got factories up here and substations and the windmills and the energy storage. Here's oil way down here in the bottom. Flywheels, that's a crackpot idea. Central's generation and, you know, hydropower and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's just another picture. And here we are back to this one again. I'm not going to explain this again because I already did. But the idea of the network is important here, as you'll see. Oh, here's another good one too. This is pretty well detailed as well, and I put these, I think these pictures are all in my paper, so you can go look at them and study them a little bit. You kind of need to sit down with this and just study it a little bit and see what are they talking about, you know? But in each case, you can see the industrial gateway. This would represent the power, you know, the information going out. And here you have the home gateway, and there's another up here, a building gateway, you know, controlling smart buildings and so on. Okay? And this is what makes it all happen. This is the grid router that sits out on the poles and stuff instead of, you still have the converters, but this grid router is going to be the device that actually routes all the data back to probably via fiber optic cable that puts all the data back to the utility and then all the way back to the Department of Energy and even beyond there. So a grid router is an important aspect of this. When we see summits coming up called things like smart grid interoperability, you start to get a little nervous. You know, okay, what is that? Well, I understand smart grid PG&E. What are we talking about here? This is a depiction of the national smart grid, folks. This is their picture, not mine. I couldn't draw a picture like this. My life depended on it. This is the idea, and if you know anything about the internet, you might get an idea. Gee, that looks a lot like the internet. You know, it kind of has a lot of these data centers and the routing places around the country, like your email gets from here to New York. How does it get there? Well, through a network like this. Well, what if one router is down? Well, it figures out how to reroute another way, and it goes another way. Okay, there's probably hundreds of thousands of different ways to get there, but it eventually does. This is the intended national smart grid that will tie our entire country together into a single, what looks like a network. I'll describe that in a second. And if that isn't a mind blower, I just don't know what can, you got to get your head around this. This is technocracy. This is technocracy. Secondly, there are plans 50% all the way through now for creating a North American smart grid. This was one of the 22 working groups, by the way, that the Security and Prosperity Partnership cut loose with the Department of Energies to talk with the other countries to tie the smart grid together between Mexico, Canada, and the United States for one contiguous policy unit. You understand what I'm saying here? In other words, the network that looked like this, just overlay that on North America and you'll have the next level up of what's happening. This is a little bit behind, but it's coming very soon. And there's some elements of it are already in place, and the negotiations are already a done deal. They're merely working on the build out at this point. This has all happened in the last 3 years. In 2009, when the economic financial meltdown happened, and President Obama authorized the stimulus package, recovery and stimulus package, several $billion, $3.9 billion were ponied up to be put on the smart grid, just summarily. Nobody even paid attention to it at that time. What is all this? Just Al Gore, we're all going to die tomorrow, wacko stuff. And, but there goes $3.8 billion. Come to find out that the other industrialized countries in the world did exactly the same thing we did. Go figure this one for a bit. They did the same thing. Canada, Mexico, countries in South America, China, Great Britain, Germany, Switzerland, all across the world. They spent stimulus money to kickstart smart grid in their own countries. Does that tell you something? Who orchestrated that? Okay, who gave them simultaneously idea to do it? With taxpayer money, not industry money. Yeah, okay. And now, lastly, the smart grid is going global. This absolutely blew my mind when I saw this, because it reminded me sort of the highway map of the North American Union when NASCO published that crazy highway map. Just the picture of it was enough to set you in flames, because how could they draw this? This is the global smart grid that's intended. This is a dimension map looking from the top down. The area here is the North Pole, and it's looking down from the top of the world. This map was invented, by the way, by R. Buckminster Fuller, a technocrat at heart. He died several years ago. But Buckminster Fuller was the guy who not only conceived the map, he also conceived the idea for a global energy network. And this is the map that's published on the website that I'm going to tell you about. Smart grid has gone global. Oh my gosh, smart grids Europe. And you notice the dates on this, 2010 and 11, Asia, 2011, smart grid, 2011 in China, smart grids Africa, Australia, Brazil, what else we got? India, China, Middle East, North Africa. It's gone global. Holy moly. And they're having even more conferences today, and when you go and look at some of these conferences, where do all these people come from? They're just, you know, we're talking thousands and thousands of people that come to these things. One website that's key in this puts it this way. This is from their website. There is a new World Wide Web emerging right before our eyes. It is a global energy network, and like the internet, it will change our culture, society, and how we do business. More importantly, it will alter how we use, transform, and exchange energy. Technocracy, folks, 100% technocracy. There is no energy supply problem, there is an energy distribution problem. And the emerging solution is a new World Wide Web of electricity. This is how they're going to get us. Wired Magazine, 2001, not a prophet necessarily, but these ideas have been kind of coming along for some time. There was no movement on it, but listen what Wired wrote. The best minds in electricity R&D have a plan. Every node in the power network of the future will be awake, responsive, adaptive, price-smart, eco-sensitive, real-time, flexible, humming, and interconnected with everything else. You see, the network we know today connects people, doesn't it? Email, videos, conference, whatever, okay? The internet that they're talking about connects inanimate objects. Your washer to a computer program, to the neighbor's washer, to the neighbor, whatever. Inanimate objects being connected together, but it's an internet nonetheless. And here's the work in progress on the globe, just so you know. The red lines indicate portions that are still not completed. They're being built out. The yellow lines are the areas that are already completed, in their mind, already completed. They got a little bit of a way to go, but considering they've only been after this for maybe 2 to 3 years, they're doing pretty good. Good project for their point of view. And all the people you expect, the endorsements you'd expect to be involved with this, it's all the same crowd, okay, that Bill has talked about, Phil has talked about, all the same people are in it. I won't even mention them, but you see that guy right in the middle there. His face is everywhere. That guy's got a good PR agent, doesn't he? What utilities have learned from smart meter tests, Wall Street Journal cut this article in 2010. This is a year after the money was released, and so some smart journalist got the idea to do a follow-up story. This is what the utilities learned from these initial tests. Number one, they learned that a principal goal is to enable utilities to restructure rate plans. Holy crud. Now we're all in trouble. Yeah, restructure the rate plan. All of us will end up paying 20, 30, 40% more within a year or two if they implement this. A principal goal, they learned, is to force consumer behavior to change. Well, I guess maybe they couldn't do it through all the sustainable development nonsense. They're cutting to the quick when they start talking power, but they're interested in forcing consumer behavior to change. And some utility executives, if you can believe this, anticipated in fear of consumer rebellion. No, that couldn't happen, could it? Oh, yes, it could. Here's an unsavory group. I hope that's nobody in this group, but here, Santa Cruz County says no to smart meters. And here's another sign, something like that, and there's not too many of them, but they're right in front of the PG&E office, and God bless their little soul sitting out there. These might be the same people who were picketing Dr. Stan a week earlier and Michael Shaw over at Freedom Advocates, I don't know, but they figured out that smart meters are not good for us, okay? It's just interesting. And here's another one a little bit more organized. They got signs, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's vote. Which do you like better? Do you like this better, or does this look better? Okay. You got it. Let me give you a few concluding thoughts. I'm sorry to rush through this, but this is all the time we got, and you're going to have to dig into it. This is new, folks. Smart grid is the enablement of technocracy. You just have to see that. The requirements from the 1930s match perfectly with what they're doing in practice today. It's a perfect match. It can't happen by accident any more than creation could happen, or the world could happen by accident with a big bang somewhere out in space. All of Technocracy's original requirements, and I say all, for energy-based system are being met today. Technocracy seeks a radically different economic and political system leading to scientific dictatorship. You have to study technocracy to find this out. Global enablers of what's going on with technocracy around the world include organizations like the venerable World Economic Forum. They're big into it. They have a sub-website dedicated to World Smart Grid. And the IEEE, that's the engineering, electronics, and electrical engineers of the world, professional society. They are the ones that are writing the specifications for the global smart grid. They have 385,000 engineers belonging to their membership around the world, and they are on board with this 120% to make it happen. I kid you not. Smart grid is fostered by executive fiat, with no congressional oversight. In any country, or parliaments, if they have parliament, nobody's looking at this. It's executive fiat. It's been done by the government. And I will suggest that who is behind the executive branch pulling the strings on this, I will argue in another talk sometime that it is the members of the Trilateral Commission that are orchestrating this to get the government to spend taxpayer money. Hey, why spend your own money if you can get them to do it? Technocrats M. King Hubbard and R. Buckminster Fuller are the founding fathers of the technocratic movement today and resulting smart grid, and their intent was crystal clear. You have to go read their intent, perhaps, to find out what they were thinking, but we have no right to second guess what they thought the movement would do. Just like people read Karl Marx today, if you want to understand communism and socialism, you have to read the technocratic documents, the foundation documents, to understand what's going on. Two people who wrote about technocracy, you can go read these books again. Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, what year? You want to know where he got his material? Directly from the technocratic movement that was just gaining steam, Technocracy, Inc. I wouldn't be surprised if he attended that Hollywood Bowl thing that went on there. In 1932, there's even an internet movie, or internet version of an old movie that was created about Brave New World. It was a scientific dictatorship where everything was controlled. George Orwell in 1949 wrote 1984, and that book looked back to technocracy. I read both of these in high school. I didn't have a clue. It was just science fiction. I didn't have any idea. But these books explore the philosophy. That is, they took the philosophy and they extended it out as best they could. This is where it's going. Technocracy makes no provision for private property. Zero. There is no ability to accumulate wealth in a technocratic system, society. Everything is controlled by energy, production, consumption, and everything is controlled from the state top down. Whoever the engineers are controlling it, they're not elected, whatever, but they have the power to control the entire society. And so you say, well, this is not very good news, is it? It ain't over till it's over. But in the meantime, remember, smart grid is watching you. This was Big Brother. And I want to repeat again that Technocracy papers are available over here. So is Orlean's book on smart grid. And I hope I haven't aggravated you too much. Oh, no. But thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Now, that was heavy information, was it not? And you know what? We're not going to worry about this. We're not going to have fear, because greater is he that is in us than he that's in the world. And that is evil that is being perpetrated on us, ladies and gentlemen. So take heart. Know that God is with us. Know that he'll continue to lead and guide us, and we will have the victory if you get out there and do your work. Thank you, Patrick.